Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And in today's episode, I'm going to tell you why today's win over the Marlins might have been the biggest win of the year for a couple of reasons. What are they? I'll explain next.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies, and I'm your host, Connor Thomas. We come to you live from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from Sports Talk Radio, credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 3 years now, and happy to be here with you on Locked On Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by Tax Network USA. Did you know that it's never too late to resolve your tax issues with the IRS? Don't wait. Reduce your tax debt and get help from a team of licensed tax professionals. Call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. As always, please make sure, if you like the show, you're rating and reviewing wherever you consume your podcast, subscribing to YouTube, all that good stuff. Little weather warning before we get started. Now, I podcast right by the window. I'm never do this. I'm going to turn the laptop around a little bit, and it is pouring out there. The Phillies just beat the rain somehow. I don't know how they figured to get so lucky, but if you hear thunder and a little bit heavy rain in the background, my apologies. I got a podcast through the storm here, get you guys that content. And we've got some great content for you today because that was potentially the win of the year for the Philadelphia Phillies so far. They've played bigger games against bigger opponents, tougher teams for sure, definitely spots where they really needed wins. But today kind of felt like a leveling of the team, leveling of the fan base, a much needed spot to win the game. So let's talk about why I think that was the game of the year for the Philadelphia Phillies. The first thing is the Phillies had their biggest comeback of the year in this game. A 4-run deficit at 6 runs to 2 in favor of the Miami Marlins was erased in this one. That's tough to do, no matter who you are, no matter what baseball team, no matter what players you have out there. If you're going to give up 6 runs with your best statistical pitcher on the mound, it's going to be really, really hard for you to get the confidence, the belief to come back. It also takes a lot of really disciplined at-bats. Like, if you've ever played baseball at any level and you've been down in a game, you know how easy it is to tighten up the grip on the bat, try and hit a 6-run home run, like try and do way too much. The Philadelphia Phillies did not do that. They just flat out battled. The bullpen was outstanding. Let's talk about the offense first, but we will get into the bullpen. The guy who deserves the most credit, and he was the player of the game on the TV broadcast, the birthday boy. Happy birthday, Trey Turner. 3 for 5, a run scored, 2 RBIs. Both of those huge late ones. He had the hit to make it 7-6 rather than 5-6. And that put the Philadelphia Phillies in position to close out this win. It was Trey Turner's heroics, but a lot of guys had solid days at the dish when you look at it in total. Bryson Stott, 1 for 5 with a run scored. Alec Boehm, 2 for 5, 2 RBIs on that 2-run home run. You've got Brandon Marsh, 2 for 4 with a run scored. Nick Castellanos probably deserved to be player of the game. 4 for 5 with 3 RBIs. He probably had the best offensive day. Trey Turner's was just, the bigger spot. But Nick Castellanos was huge in this game for the Philadelphia Phillies. He's up to batting .231 on the year. For all you folks who gave up on Casty, maybe the guy that was an all-star last year has a little bit left in the tank. Who would have guessed? Cody Clemens, 1 for 3. He's starting to kind of settle back in when you get into a situation where you're replacing Bryce Harper. It's never going to be an easy situation, but okay, I like seeing him go 1 for 3. Edmundo Sosa 0 for 2 being inserted as a pinch hitter, and then moving over to third base. Whit Merrifield 0 for 3. He did have a walk. David Dahl 1 for 4. Big spot, run scored. Rafael Marchand, a run scored. He had a walk. So everyone was on base besides Edmundo Sosa. And Edmundo Sosa was inserted in partway through the game. So you do love to see that balanced approach from the Phillies. They had, believe it or not, they allowed 11 hits. They had 14 hits in the game. It didn't feel like a 14-hit ball game just because I guess they were down for a lot of it and you were so focused on what happened on the mound with Ranger Suarez. But the offense was not the problem today. They picked it up late, but they got it going when they needed to. 1 run in the 5th, 2 runs in the 6th, 2 runs in the 7th. That'll get the job done, especially after scoring 2 in the bottom of the 1st. The offense is okay right now. You're missing Harper, you're missing Schwarber, you're hearing thunder, and That's just the Angels up top celebrating the Philadelphia Phillies win. But bottom line is, you're looking at a team that does not have their best offensive lineup available day in and day out until you get JT and Harp and Schwarber back from injury. And to go out and put up 14 hits it's impressive in its own right. The comeback is huge. The at-bats late are big. A lot of guys stepped up big late in this game. Castellanos twice, Turner once, Whit Merrifield, David Dahl. A lot of guys stepping up. Rafael Marchand, Bryson Stott, Alec Boehm, putting together good at-bats late in this game. Not the best hitting as far as like, clean contact, you're roping the ball, but they just had big hits when they needed them, timely. And the Marlins kind of got shut down late. So let's flip over to the pitching side of this conversation. It's also incredible that you win this game considering Ranger Suarez didn't have his best stuff. This is another reason why this is, in my opinion, the biggest win of the year so far for the Phillies. Not just because you have that big comeback, the biggest of the year, but Ranger Suarez goes 4 2/3 innings. He allows 9 hits. He allows 6 earned runs. I didn't think that was possible. 2 walks, no strikeouts. He has no Ks. 91 pitches thrown, and he could not string together 3 straight strikes. Well, 3 straight strikeout level strikes. Bottom line is you expect to have your ace go out there, and you expect to have them dominate, and it's just like, unfortunately, you didn't get that today. Might not be your day. 6 runs and 4 2/3 innings from that guy is normally a sign that you're not going to win the ballgame. And what do you get out of the bullpen? But Jose Ruiz coming out, giving you an inning and a third, only allowing 1 hit, striking out 2. Great tone-setting performance for the bullpen by him. Seranthony Dominguez, 1 inning pitch, allows a hit, allows a walk, strikes a guy out, works out of danger. It wasn't the cleanest inning, but man, he worked out of it, and that's a confidence builder. Even though it's the Marlins, that's a confidence builder. Gregory Soto, a shutdown inning pitch, 2 strikeouts, and then Jeff Hoffman closes the door, gets a save. This bullpen cannot be commended enough for what they've been doing lately. It's not just the starting pitching, folks. People look at this team, I think nationally, and they see the low ERAs for starters. And they're like, Suarez is good, Wheeler's good, Nola's good, Sanchez has been unbelievable. And you look at that and say, okay, the strength of the starting pitching is the Philadelphia Phillies calling card. And then you get into the bullpen on a day like this where you think you have this game won, and the next thing you know, that bullpen shuts you down. They have just straight up great pitching, top to bottom, the Philadelphia Phillies do. And it was on display today. So that was another thing, seeing the bullpen step up for a part of your team that's been so reliable, which is the starting rotation. That's another reason why this was the biggest win of the year to me, is because you didn't rely on what you normally rely on. That this might have been the greatest example of this team can win a lot of different ways. And the last reason why this was, to me, the biggest win of the year is because of the spot you were in. In game 1 of this series, not only do you lose a game that you should have won, Zach Wheeler deserved better. You had a 3-0 lead when he exited the game. Should have been out of an inning and everything. We've already talked about that in an episode. You can go back to that day's episode to hear my thoughts on that performance on Thursday. But bottom line, after that is you lose Harper, you lose Schwarber, you have a nightmare start, you lose 2 of the first 3 games. You're down 4 in game 4 of this 4-game set against the Marlins in division, the team you should beat at home. The Phillies are the best home team in baseball. And you really could not afford to drop 3 of 4 to the Marlins. Like, that would just be – it's not about the record. It's not where you are in the standings. I know the Phillies are in fine shape with their win-loss record, but the fan base was kind of feeling tumultuous today, partway through this game. And I don't blame anybody. Like, this would have been a very, very tough series to lose. We came into this expecting, hey, series win, anything less than that is a major disappointment. I said that. It's a failure if they split. Obviously, the threshold has to be shifted with the injuries to Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber, but you're looking at a situation where it was a time where the fan base could have started getting super nervous. Maybe the team starts getting a little nervous. How are we going to withstand this time without Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto? Or do we take care of business? Are we good enough right now? That's a conversation we're going to have a little bit later on in the episode. But bottom line is the Philadelphia Phillies go out there and they stage a major comeback in a spot where they really needed it, with some guys that you don't necessarily expect to have big at-bats. I know you do with Castellanos and Turner, but the other guys who were on for those guys that put together great at-bats and big RBI spots, and then your bullpen shuts the door and you get a much-needed win. Doesn't it feel a lot better having this conversation than the is it time to panic for the next 2 weeks conversation that we would have been having if the Philadelphia Phillies lost this ball game? And notice I said for the next 2 weeks. Part of what we're going to talk about coming up, because the next thing we're going to get into are the major takeaways from this series. And also later in the episode, we're going to get into what this team is right now without Harp, Realmuto, and Schwarber. And it feels a lot more of a, okay, this team's still good. We always believed they were still good, but having to see that come back and knowing that they can win that way is just, it is a confidence builder for a team that really needed it right now. It's a great thing for the Philadelphia Phillies. So we'll dive deeper into these conversations coming up. But yes, the win of the year, in my opinion, for the Philadelphia Phillies, when you consider everything, it's so much more fun having this conversation. We'll talk about the takeaways from the series coming up next. But I want to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks first. They're America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. They've got over 5 million active members. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike the other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. You're not playing other players who can outscore you or anything. No, you just have to be right. It's that simple. Makes it pretty easy, right? And how many times do you have to be right? Well, all you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in if you get them right. It's super, super easy to do. You can put together a lineup in under 60 seconds. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You turn $10 into $1,000. How's that for something in the middle of the summer when you could probably use a little bit of extra jingle in your pocket? Prize Picks is great with that. And if you're looking for promotions, well, they got those too. They got you covered every week, from lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Friday. So check out Prize Picks. And if you download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB, you'll get a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. That's what Prize Picks say. It's just that easy. I also want to talk to you about our title sponsor, Tax Network USA. And here on Locked On Phillies, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team. Might be in the offseason, draft, spring training, regular season, playoffs. It's year-round. There is no stopping for Locked On Phillies. And you know what else is year-round? Collection season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean that the IRS is going to stop coming after you if you haven't filed your taxes. Unfiled taxes can kill you. I mean, the IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. You don't want to be in their crosshairs. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you with the IRS. They got over 14 years of experience, A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, and they also have saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. So whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or maybe you finally hit that parlay this season and need to file it correctly, need some help with that, we'll call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon and be sure to mention Locked On Phillies at checkout, and you'll even receive a $250 discount off their services. $250 off. Go ahead and do it. You can't afford not to. Check out Tax Network USA. So what are our major takeaways from this series with the Miami Marlins? A series that you split, a series that Ranger Suarez didn't look good in, Zach Wheeler lost a start in. I mean, you're looking at Aaron Nola didn't have his best stuff, but then you get like a great complete game shutout performance by Christopher Sanchez. My number one takeaway, just thinking about like the pitching and how the offense is played, this team still has a very high ceiling, even without Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, and JT Realmuto. Like, they can play amazing baseball. The issue with it is they're just not as consistent. If Alec Boehm and Nick Castellanos and Trey Turner have a good day, like a good day by their standards, you can like win baseball games comfortably without Harper and Schwarber and Realmuto. But where the consistency goes is you can't expect those guys to have great days every day. Nobody has a great day every day. You're going to have off days. You're going to have a starter that has an off day. And if the offense is quiet, well, then you're in a much tougher spot. So the question right now with this Philadelphia Phillies team, I think, well, the question from this series is consistency. That's my number one takeaway. The consistency is not going to be there the way it was when this team was beating everybody comfortably, night in, night out. They just don't lose. Like, that doesn't happen with the lineup that you have right now. But they're still a very, very good baseball team on a given day. Now it's just a given day. Before, It was every day. Who cares? Sunday, Monday, create a new day. The Philadelphia Phillies are winning baseball games. So that's something we're going to have to come to terms with over the next couple weeks as we watch this team without three of their best hitters. Like, that's just reality for the Phillies. Now, here's the good news. They're not bad. I don't think the Philadelphia Phillies are a bad baseball team without Harper, Schwarber, and Remuto. I just told you, they're not. So I think we should still expect a level of success that is equal to what I'm talking about with the Phillies. That's not go out there and take 2 or 3 from the Dodgers and the Braves. Like, is that something you were going to ask this team to do? Absolutely. We're still going to ask them to do that. I still think they're capable of doing that depending on the pitching matchups and everything and the night you get from certain players. But it's no longer the expectation you win every series. It's just not. It's unfair to the players available for the Phillies to ask that. That's the other thing that you kind of learn from this series is, okay, we need to reset proper expectations. The offense has a high ceiling, but they've got a low floor. Speaking of the offense, the other thing that we're going to need to look at, does there need to be a different offensive approach? Is the long ball something that you could still use to your advantage? Is it something that maybe becomes more beneficial? I'll tell you what, I do not think that the 2024 Philadelphia Phillies have been a team that's relied on the long ball. I don't. They've hit a couple, but I don't think they're winning games because of their ability to hit the ball out of the yard. Like, I don't think that's what this team is based around. I do think that there were stretches for the 2022 team where that was the case. There were points with the 2023 team where that's the case. I think the approach changes that the Phillies made in the wake of, I should say, that Diamondbacks NLCS series loss, I think they've been beneficial. I think you're seeing a much more balanced offensive approach when this team is at full strength. But what I would say, if I was controlling the Phillies, let's just say it that way, because even coaching, you're not telling guys to like go chase home runs. But if I could like pick, like, here's how I want you to try and approach stuff. I feel like home runs are going to become more valuable for the Phillies over the next 2 weeks. I don't think they have the lineup to string together 3 runs an inning, 4 runs an inning, like at any given time, like you felt like they could do before. They can still do that. Again, we talked about it. High ceiling. But when you have the bottom of the order that you have, it's going to be much tougher to string together hits and do it consistently across innings. The long ball feels super valuable to the Philadelphia Phillies right now. So who could potentially go on a power surge? Maybe Alec Boehm, but that's not really his bag. You know what's funny? Trey Turner hasn't really hit his power surge. And you can see he's starting to see the baseball better. He's starting to barrel up the baseball. He's not really lifting it the way that you need to have one of those stretches where you hit like 3 home runs in a week and a half or something. But it could be coming. He feels like he's close to being back to the guy he was at the start of the season. And even at the start of the season, he wasn't really slugging the baseball. You remember last year after the standing ovation, well, like a month after the standing ovation, he had that stretch where he was just mashing baseballs. He can heat up as well as anybody in baseball. He can. It'll be for a shorter time period, but for like a week and a half, 2 weeks, there's a chance to trade. The best version of Trey Turner is, I don't know, 6 home runs, 5 home runs, and like 10 RBIs or whatever. Like, you could see a lot of production out of him, and you're going to need it. So that's one of the other takeaways from this series. And when you look at the rotation, the number one thing I'm thinking out of this Marlins series, you had a couple of bad starts and a tough loss for Zach Wheeler, but a bad start by Ranger, a rough one kind of for Nola. Deep breath on the rotation. We know how good these guys are. Sometimes the added pressure of like, hey, I know we don't have some of our top bats today. You try and be perfect. You try and be finer with things. You start missing on the edge instead of just trusting your defense, trusting your offense if you make a mistake and stuff like that. So that can be tough mentally. I don't know that that's the only thing, but that can be tough mentally. Remember, they're also throwing to catchers they're not totally comfortable with the way they are with JT Realmuto for some of these guys. So that's another thing to consider. And also, I don't know. We've seen bad starts from all these guys. Aaron Nola has had a miserable start at some point this year. Zach Wheeler has had a miserable start at some point this year. Ranger Suarez has had a miserable start at some point this year. He had one today. Christopher Sanchez, miserable start at some point this year. These guys are not like perfect. Nobody is in baseball, but we know they're darn good. And just because a couple of those things lined up, right? You know what? It was kind of like yesterday's loss when Matt Strahm and Jeff Hoffman got in a spot where it's just like they gave up 2 runs. Was that yesterday? Whatever. The game where Hoffman and Strahm, the days of the week, and are running together for me. But when they both kind of got shelled in back-to-back innings worth of work, you don't think, oh, no, they think there's a problem with the bullpen. You think, wow, that's a bad time for that to happen. This is a bad stretch to have a couple of guys not on their game in the starting rotation. I imagine that they're going to be just fine going forward. There's much more in the positive category with this pitching staff than there is in the negative one. So on the pitching front, deep breath, everybody. They're just fine. On the offensive front, might have to attack things a different way and hope for some different stuff and grind a little bit at the plate a little bit more. But, hey, that's what happens when you lose guys to injury. It's great that they still found a way to win the series. Now, in tomorrow's episode, we're going to dive in. It's an off day to where the Philadelphia Phillies stand right now, an update on the injuries, kind of just an overall of the scene. But I'm going to answer one of those questions coming up next. Is this team good enough right now? And it kind of plays on what we talked about earlier in the week with trades and all of that stuff. Is it time to get a little bit aggressive? Is it time to move up the timeline for making a move? We'll discuss all of that coming up as we wrap up today's episode. But let's talk about FanDuel first, because I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. I hope there's a game every day for the rest of my life. As the playoffs wind down, well, they're all done now. We get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. And you're looking at a situation where, I mean, you've got to find FanDuel. You got to get on FanDuel because they let you keep the sports going whenever you want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody. You got to check it out every day, all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer, because FanDuel is official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. So go ahead and check out our friends over at FanDuel for more info. I really, really love this conversation because it's an introspective look at where the Phillies are right now. The baseball season is not as simple as just trotting a team out there. It's not football. Heck, it's not even basketball or hockey. It's twice as long pretty much as any of those other sports. And you're looking at a different type of team right now for the Philadelphia Phillies. The guys available are not the best possible players. And the standard that you've built for the Phillies is higher than where they're playing at right now. So is this team good enough right now to tread water, we'll call it? And to expand on that, is treading water at this point good enough? My answer to both of those questions is absolutely, positively yes. And you might say, this is Connor being positive again. Here he goes. He's going to spout some stuff about how this team's so special. And, well, they are. And I've been right a lot more than I've been wrong this year. But let me make my case a little bit further, if you will allow me. You just put up 14 hits. I know it's the Miami Marlins, but it was not your best day. It was not your best defense. It was not your best offense. It was not your best pitching. When it comes to the starting pitching, you won a game. Like, today is the textbook example of why this team is still good enough to tread water. And that's also like where the bar is at, right? Maybe that's the first answer I should give, because treading water is okay. We're going to look at the standings as we always do on off days tomorrow, and we're going to take a peek around Major League Baseball. Let's take a quick preview, though, of that. Are the Philadelphia Phillies still the best team in baseball winning percentage-wise? Yes. Have they won the most games in all of baseball? Yes. Like, are they still comfortably up in the league when you look at the National League? 3 games over the Dodgers. I'd call that comfortable considering how good the Dodgers are. Are they still up comfortably in the division? 8 games up over the Braves. No real difference in that from when Harper and Schwarber went down. Now you got more time to withstand that, but 8 games, yeah, we ain't losing sleep over an 8-game lead in the division. That's a great place to be. I mean, all of these things point towards you have a buffer zone. Maybe not so much against the Dodgers, because you play them coming up in just a little bit, and that's going to be a paramount series for the Philadelphia Phillies to get the best out of all of their players available. That's going to be a tough one. The Atlanta Braves one, now if you, let's say, worst case scenario, you get swept. 5 games in the division, okay, it's not ideal, but still, if you told me 5-game lead over the Braves in July at the start of the season, we take that. The only reason that feels like tight is because of how big of a lead the Phillies have had at some point. And I don't think they're going out to get swept. The Phillies haven't been swept by anybody all year long. They're looking at a situation where they take care of business at least 1 game in every series they play. So you feel pretty good about everything from that perspective. Would I like to see them add in the outfield? And do I have a little bit of an antsy finger when it comes to trades? Absolutely. I mean, I would love to see them add Luis Robert tomorrow, Brent Rooker tomorrow. I know Brent Rooker's had a bit of a slow point of the season, but talented player, can give you more upside than some of the guys you have in the outfield right now. But that is more positional. It's not so much where you're at. It would just like, if you're going to do it, maybe do it early and save yourself a couple, like find a win or two in there because of that move. Make your lineup make a little bit more sense because of that move. But it's not totally because I don't think this team can compete right now. It would just make it easier. And if you're going to make that move anyway, hell, do it now. But I don't know. Anywhere else, I'm not antsy with anything. I've heard people talk about, well, do you trade for a first baseman for a short-time solution? Do you trade for someone who could DH that could potentially be a fourth outfielder? Maybe, I guess that one you could do, but I don't know. I don't think it'll be that big of a deal with Harper and Schwarber out. You think about it, we're looking at about 2 weeks. Well, we're already 3 days into that, and you took care of, well, 2 of those 3 games. So, Phil's have a winning record so far without him. It'd be really hard for me to panic over everything. And this team isn't, here's what I'll tell you. This team isn't good enough to consistently compete with the Dodgers right now. This team isn't good enough to, well, maybe they are with the Braves because the Braves are missing Strider and Acuna, but missing Schwarber, Romuto, Harper. Like, I don't know that this team is good enough to compete with the Braves consistently right now. Now, if you have good series against those teams and if you have good production in those 3 games, I'm not saying you can't win those series. I'm saying if you played both those teams in 7 games right now, the Dodgers would probably beat you and the Braves would give you a darn good run for your money. So that's more what I'm talking about. Like, how do they stack up against the competition? And should we be expecting a little bit of regression back in the standings? I think that's only natural. My whole argument of the positive side of this is I think you built yourself a good amount of room to regress. And then you can deal with having to heat up again when Harper and Schwarber and Romuto come back and are available and you get to the backside of the All-Star break. You get a little rest in there for some guys. That is when you really start to hit the ground running. Like, that's the time. You have to survive the stretch till then. Let's look at what the Philadelphia Phillies have coming up until the All-Star break. And we'll dive deeper into this tomorrow's episode. We're going to talk standings. We're going to talk schedule. We're going to talk a lot of stuff. But with June being over, we're also going to review the month of June. You play 3 against the Cubs, beatable team, under 500 by 7 games. Then it's Braves, Dodgers for 6. Then it's the Athletics for 3. And then you're at the All-Star break. Like, yeah, you can survive. 2 of those series are very winnable even without your best stuff out there. And then you got the Braves and the Dodgers mixed in there where it's low risk, high reward. You lose, you don't have your best guys. You win, you guys can't even beat us when we're not at our best. So that's why I'm not going to freak out over anything unless the Phils, I don't know, lose like 6 straight games. They would have to really, really collapse here for the absence of Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber to make a huge negative impact on the season as a whole. And I'm very comfortable saying that probably isn't going to happen. We'll go with probably. I'm not going to say, oh, that's never going to happen, because someone will be in the comments and say, oh, you're wrong about this. I already had someone commenting on a video saying, see, you're wrong. The Phillies lost 3 of 4 to the Marlins. Ha, incorrect. And all of this stuff. So, okay, they're probably not going to have like a catastrophic stretch before Harper and Schwarber come back, and Romuto is supposed to be back into the All-Star break himself. So I'm all good with where the Philadelphia Phillies are at right now. You should be too. That was one of those wins that like calms the nerves significantly for the fan base. One last thought on that. I think this team thinks they're good enough right now. I think if this team went into the playoffs as is, and like Bryce Harper, Kyle Schwarber, and JT Romuto were Thanos snapped off the face of the earth, would they be the favorites? No. But would they believe they're the favorites? Absolutely. The confidence this team has in themselves, it's why they continue to battle. It's why they're always making it tight games. It's the focus that they need to go where they want to go for this season. And it's pretty darn impressive to see. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for being with us again tomorrow. An off day for the Philadelphia Phillies as they travel up to Chicago. So they're going to be back in action Tuesday night. Enjoy the day off. We will have content for you tomorrow about all that stuff I was talking about. You've got a situation where you could really use it to rest the bullpen after a long outing today. So definitely want that taken care of. It's a good time to have an off day. It's the Phillies' first off day in a minute. We'll get into all the off day discussion tomorrow, as I've already said. But again, thank you for checking us out. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I want to remind you one more time, please make sure you're rating, reviewing, and subscribing to Locked On Phillies on YouTube. It's the best way to let us know you like our content here on Locked On Phillies. Let me know I'm doing a good job. hit that subscribe button. Cost you nothing. Get you new notifications when episodes are posted. So all of that would be awesome. Okay, y'all stay safe with this weather out there. I'll talk to you next time on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.